Chapter 27 Being Edjumicated. In Vietnam, every battalion's war was different. The stories of 2 Ra, NZ were not the stories of 3 Ra, illustrating the varied and complex nature of the conflict. Terry Burstall. Beer was 20 cents a can at our boozer. 2 cans per man per day, perhaps. We were taking a few days to settle in. We cleaned up our lines as best we could and a couple of us went outside the wire to collect some bamboo for the inside wall of the boozer. Did I say outside the wire? What a strange feeling that was. All the local Vietnamese had been moved out to beyond mortar range, about 4 kilometers, and the base was surrounded by barbed wire and other wired obstacles, including mines and claymores, to a depth of 100 meters. Moving outside all this protection felt rather odd. I was on high alert just in case Nigel was out there planning to take a pot shot at us. We drove out by Land Rover along a dusty road looking for a clump of bamboo, and it wasn't long before we found some. While we were hacking away at it, some Yanks came by in an APC. The guy up top, the vehicle commander, held up both arms with his fingers on both hands showing the peace sign, or V for victory. Peace, brother. They stopped to have a look at our Land Rover. How do you Aussies drive these things? One of them asked as he simulated changing gears in the driver's seat. You want to swap your Jeep for our APC? You could imagine the problem if we arrived back at the CQ in an APC. Where's my fucking Rover, you pricks? The Yanks went on their way and we got back to the boozer without being attacked. You could say I survived my first mission. I went 2 kilometers down the road and returned unscathed. Nui Dat was a funny place. There was a small hill where the super grunts lived, the SAS. North from the hill was a rather large airstrip running east-west. It catered for winged aircraft such as the Hercules, Caribou and Pilatus Porter. To the east were the rubber trees that housed the infantry battalions. To the south of the hill was a large helicopter pad with the dust-off chopper nearby. Also around that area were the tankies and the artillery guys and a few other hangers-on. Next door to us were the New Zealanders, 2 companies of infantry who formed part of our unit. We were called the Anzac Battalion. Our full title was the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Australian Regiment, New Zealand, Anzac Battalion, or 2 Ra NZ, Anzac Battalion for short. It may not mean much to you, but for us blokes it was about getting it right. To get it wrong is the same as someone spelling your name wrong. Note how capitals are used for the word Anzac when describing the actual troops. The first few days involved a lot of introductory training. One of the NCOs had an Armorite, known colloquially as the M16. It is a black lightweight automatic assault rifle capable of spewing out 5.56 rounds at a very fast rate. See Tools of the Trade at the end of the book. It is its high velocity that does the damage. A round can penetrate the flesh of a limb and not do too much damage except for smallish entry and exit wounds. But if that round hits a bone it will shatter, causing severe wounding. It looks like a plastic toy rifle. The NCO carried out safety precautions on the M16 and said, "This weapon is in the unloaded condition. The chamber is empty, the working parts are forward and there is no magazine on the weapon." Yep, that seemed to me about as unloaded as you can get. He then attached a magazine containing rounds onto the weapon, grasped it by the barrel and holding the muzzle upright he struck it butt first onto the table in front of him. He then put the weapon to his shoulder, aimed it at the pit behind him and pulled the trigger. The weapon fired. He went on to explain, when the weapon is in the unloaded condition, the safety catch cannot be placed on, safe, like the SLR, for example. Simply placing a magazine containing rounds on the weapon and giving the weapon a jolt is enough to move the working parts to the rear, pick up a round from the magazine and chamber the round. The weapon is now at the instant condition, that is, if the trigger is activated by your finger or caught on a bit of webbing or a stick or something like that. The weapon will fire. Shit, how dangerous was that? The M16 was used by the scouts, section commanders and the pogos in platoon headquarters. I hoped they kept an eye on them. I will explain what a pogo is later. The same NCO, who had our full attention, moved on to a detonator, det. We had to handle dets for the Claymore mine. I'll also explain more about them later as well. All you need to know at this stage is that it is an anti-personnel mine that contains explosive and ball bearings. To arm the mine, a digger has to physically place the det into the mine, then a simple electric charge will set it off. By taking the det out of the mine it is perfectly safe for the digger to carry around in his pack. The NCO placed the det under a piece of meat about the same size as a man's hand. He set the det off with an electric charge and the piece of meat flew through the air and came down in a mangled mess. That could be a digger's hand if the det went off while he was holding it. Double shit, why weren't we taught stuff like this in Australia? Later we were taken over to the dust-off helicopter. The dust-off was essentially an ambulance helicopter. It carried no munitions, although I suspected the pilots and crew carried personal weapons in case the chopper went down. The dust-off chopper also had a large red cross on a white background located on both sides of the aircraft and maybe underneath, I'm not sure. It was crewed by Yanks. We piled out of the trucks and climbed all over the dust-off helicopter while a couple of Yanks wearing Ray-Bans stood by looking quite bored. One of them spoke, his white teeth glowing in the South Vietnam sun, a perfect foil to his dark sunglasses. Excuse me for thinking that these guys were big-noting themselves. The two things I recall from their instructions are that the diameter of the wings was 48 feet, they needed a clearing to be only 50 feet in diameter and they would land the aircraft. And I believed them. We'd all heard stories about how amazing those pilots were. He told us that was preferable to hovering above the canopy winching a wounded digger up to them. They were sitting ducks while hovering and they would rather be on the ground. The last thing he said to us was we take no kilos. What the fuck is a kilo? Someone whispered. Oh, about 2 pounds, came the response. No, fuckhead, he means KIA, killed in action. Oh. The final bit was a firepower demonstration. This must have taken some organization. We moved outside the wire. There were APCs guarding us and choppers circling overhead. The battalion was herded together in one group. What a target for the VC. First up, the APCs showed us their firepower, 30 cal and 50 cal machine guns. We all loved the sound of the 50 cal. Next came the mortars and then the artillery, each showing the various types of ammo which most of us had seen before. Enter the Centurion tank, the dinosaur of tanks. It rattled forward and parked. The tankies brought our attention to a tree about 800 meters away on a slight hill. The tank let go a heat, high explosive anti-tank, round, shattering our eardrums, and the percussion blocked our ears as well as jettisoning plenty of dust from the tank. It was immensely powerful, but it missed the tree. In fact, we could see the trajectory of the round, it went straight through the fork. The tankies were not happy with all the jeering, so they fired another round and the tree bit the dust. I was surprised how accurate they were for such an old jalopy. The culmination of the firepower demonstration was the air capability of our supporting aircraft. First up were the Bushranger helicopters. They were normal Huey helicopters fitted out with miniguns, rockets and twin M60 machine guns on either side. They looked awesome. But they were not as awesome as the Cobra gunships. They were assault helicopters. They were narrow and the pilots were seated behind one another. They had rockets, miniguns, 40mm grenade discharger, you name it. Even with a full payload on board they were very maneuverable and the flying skills of the pilots really impressed us. And they not only looked awesome but they sounded awesome as well. The last demo showed 2 jet aircraft dropping their ordnance. See how quickly us dumb grunts pick up the lingo, right on top of that mangled tree 800 meters away. It all happened in a matter of seconds. To make the spectacle more entertaining, loudspeakers were set up so we could hear what they were saying as arrangements were made to drop their bombs. Boy, what a powerful demonstration of the type of support that was available to us dumb grunts. We became very confident that we would sort those bad guys out. The VC had nothing like it. Hey, I just had a thought, they should have invited the VC along. After watching a very powerful display like that, the VC would surrender on the spot and we could go back home. Mission completed. I'd better tell our CO, Johnny Three Fingers, of my great idea. No wait, he might recognize me as the bloke who wouldn't salute him and throw me in the slammer.